Last chapter, we discussed groups. Today, we're going to move that one step further and look at teams. Teams are similar to groups, with one very important difference. First of all, before we get to the difference between groups and teams, teams, well, really what they are is sub companies, where a company or an organization takes a group of people and says, okay, you handle that project. They better utilize employees' talents, they're flexible, and they democratize, which means that they can have a rule or a decision making process from within the team. The difference between a group and a team is that a group is a bunch of people charged with studying a particular issue or making a particular decision. Whereas a team they don't necessarily all do the same thing. They don't necessarily all make the same decisions and all kind of step on each other's toes and work on the same area. What they do is a team might have one individual that's going to market, and one individual that's going to write the copy, and one individual that's going to put together an ad, and one individual that's going to sell, and one individual that's going to do customer support, but they're working on one product or one project or one idea. It's not necessarily that they're all working together on the same exact task. They're working on a bunch of different tasks to accomplish one more comprehensive goal. You can see some of the difference over here. You have work groups. And again, there's nothing wrong with work groups. It's not like there's a contradiction between work groups and teams. In fact, there could be a work team with a work group within it to study a particular idea, or to study, to have a committee within a work team to study something, which would be a work group, which would be a work group. I mean, this slide kind of compares the in terms of what they're good for and what they're not good for, but I like to think of them as being more as complementary ideas, separate ideas that, there could be advantages of one over the other, but they don't necessarily contradict each other. So, I mean, just an example of types of teams, you could have a problem-solving team. Maybe people study different aspects of a particular problem and different possible solutions. Self-managed teams, where each person runs his or her component of the task to be done. Cross-functional, where each individual can do many different functions on the team. Then they're virtual, which people don't even necessarily work together synchronously. They each have to come up with some aspect of a solution to some sort of a problem. So let's take a look at some of these ideas. The problem solving team, very often they come from the same department, and the reason this is actually more analogous to a group than some of the other types of teams that we're going to look at, they're very often from the same department because they're looking at a particular problem, and the people from a particular department where there was that problem, where that problem was generated, or where that problem was noticed, are more likely to be able to come up with good solutions. They share ideas. They don't necessarily make the decisions or implement their suggested actions. They just come up with a potential solution that is then presented to the board or presented to management, who makes the ultimate decision about whether to effect that suggestion. Self-managed work teams apply to a certain number. Again, the slide says 10 to 15. It doesn't specifically have to be 10 to 15, but a number of employees on related tasks. And each member of the team, or the team in general, takes on supervisory responsibilities in terms of assigning tasks, working with customers, operating decisions. These are all just possibilities. You might have a team, for example, that's in charge of improving customer service in the organization, and then you might have, okay, this person's responsible to go over the tapes of 100 random customer service calls, and this person is in charge of interviewing some of the customers, and this person is in charge of interviewing the people who are the customer service representatives, and this person is in charge of researching other companies to see how they improve their customer service management. And different people can do different things, and they can select and evaluate members, and they look at what they think will do best in this particular task. In other words, they might all get together at the end of the day or at the end of the week or whenever they finish, and they might present the results to each other, and each one might come up with independent ideas. Their suggestions on how to improve it might contain a multifaceted approach, and really that's probably the best idea, is to present a multifaceted approach. Um, Cross-functional teams means gathering people from different areas and who are in charge of different aspects of the product or company or organization, and see if they can bring the different levels of performance together. Members from the same level but diverse areas. You have one person from instead of a bunch of people from the customer service department. If you're looking at customer service, but you might bring one person from the customer service department and one person from the sales department and one person from the tech support department and one person from the manufacturing department, so that they could all contribute. Maybe the manufacturer knows what the customer service reps should say to people when they're having a particular issue because they know more about the manufacturing process. Maybe somebody in the sales department can manage customers' expectations and say, well, when we sell the product, we tell the customer XYZ. You need to make sure that you need to go into the conversation knowing that the customer expects XYZ because that's what our advertising says. So they exchange information, they develop new ideas. It may be time consuming because there's complexity and there's diversity. Try getting the people who are the manufacturers and the people who are the tech support people to agree on everything is not going to be very, very easy, but you really get a cross section you get a more comprehensive understanding when you deal with people in different parts of the company and different aspects and different people who may not work together at all on a general basis. The person in tech support and the person in manufacturing might not work together at all except in this sort of situation. So it may take some adjustments and may take each person a little while to get onto the other person's wavelength, but it could really allow people to gain an understanding that they wouldn't otherwise. Then you have the virtual teams, which is simply based on the idea that each person does his or her thing, and you kind of get all the products together to get a better idea. This computer technology ties dispersed teams together. Of course, challenges are difficulties in information, difficulties in communication, less social rapport. Now, of course, this is not a contradiction between the other things. You could have a virtual self-managed team, you could have a virtual cross-functional team, but this is the sort of thing that may be necessary or may be appropriate, especially for people who work from different places, or a company that has different offices, or even some companies that have people working at home or in disparate places just on a general basis. So let's look at the factors that make teams effective or ineffective. And you're going to recognize a lot of these factors because a lot of these are actually very similar to the group qualifications and the group factors that we discussed before. There's context of the team. Does the team have the resources it needs? Does the team have the leadership that it needs? Does it have a climate of trust where they work together and are able and are motivated to work together? Performance evaluation and reward systems, again, the sort of thing that you may need in terms of a team to have people who have the same issue that groups do, in that they may not be motivated to do everything by themselves because they're relying on other team members, although it's a little less relevant than the group. In the group world, you had multiple people doing precisely the same task. In the team world, you have individuals doing tasks leading towards a larger goal. So you don't have as much this idea where people are going to rely on other people to do their work for them, because in the team context, there might not be more than one person assigned to a specific task that has to get done. Then you have the composition. When you're talking about building a team, you have to take into account the abilities of the members. Does the team as a unit have the ability to do everything competently? The personality of the people, the roles. The roles are very important. You have to assign proper roles to everybody in the team so that people aren't misplaced. Diversity in the team, again, to increase the problem solving and the different viewpoints. Size is important. You don't want to make the team too big because then it gets diluted and people don't think they have to work as hard. You don't want to make the team too small because then they might not have the resources to do what they have to do. And member flexibility and preferences. How willing are people to do things that are maybe a little bit outside their comfort zone, a little bit outside what they normally do for the best interest of the team. And of course, then you have the process, which is very similar to what we discussed in terms of groups. The people having the same goals, the same purpose, team efficacy and efficiency, low conflict levels, and preventing social loafing, which again sometimes you have in the context of teams, although maybe a little bit less than you do in the context of groups. And again, this is pretty much the same as we just discussed. Of course, establishing a team Adding whatever benefits you have from a team process will be the actual group's effectiveness. So you're going to have some gains from the fact that there's a team. You're going to have some negatives from the fact that there's a team, and you have to weigh and see which one outweighs the other. So, for all of its benefits, we need to make sure that before we establish a team and rely on that team for various work goals, first of all, the people on the team have to be willing to work as a team. They have to be quote unquote team players. You need employees who have interpersonal as well as technical skills. People who don't have interpersonal skills and are incapable of working with each other are not going to make good team members. And people who don't have the technical skills to interact with other people on their team, that could be communication issues, it could be writing in the same computer language as other people on the team, it could be in many different factors, are not going to be good team players. Training is also important in terms of working with a team. Workshops on problem solving, communication, negotiation, conflict management, coaching skills, these are all things that make people better team players. Again, companies may not want to invest those kinds of resources in training their people to be team players, but big companies who have long-term resources or long-term people might do that. Might bring in corporate trainers to work on their people to be better team players. And of course, encouraging cooperative efforts rather than individual ones, similar to the group, encourages teamwork and encourages everybody to work on behalf of the team. Teams don't always work. Sometimes teams are a bad idea. Based on the complexity of work, maybe it can be done better by one person or multiple people. I mean, it really depends on the work. Sometimes it takes more time and effort to bring a team up to speed and to catch up the other people what they need to know, then it would be just more efficient just to have one person do it. Does the work create a common purpose, or is it really the sort of thing that is better handled in individual units? That's another thing you have to worry about. And are the members of the group interdependent? Do they depend on each other? These are all things that make teams good. And if the answer to all these questions is no, then you might want to think about not having a team at all, leaving it up to the individuals, or completely separating the tasks so that people are working on the different tasks but completely individually without necessarily working for each other with each other.